Back in the 17th century, England was wrestling with this huge question. Does a king rule by divine right or by the consent of the people? Well, the answer came from a surprising event with an even more surprising name, the Glorious Revolution.
I mean, it's a fantastic name, isn't it? Glorious. It just sounds so triumphant, so honorable, almost perfect. But what exactly made it so glorious?
And right away, we hit our first twist. That name, it's a little bit of marketing. Because while the power shift in England itself was pretty peaceful, it actually kicked off some brutal wars elsewhere. So to get the real story, we need to back up a bit.
To really get what happened in 1688, we have to remember this wasn't the first time the kingdom had been turned upside down. This whole thing was really the sequel to the English Civil War that had shaken the country just a few decades early.
You see, the Civil War had left this massive scar and a bunch of huge, unanswered questions just hanging in the air. Sure, the monarchy was back, but that fundamental power struggle with Parliament, it was still simmering right below the surface. It was a really fragile piece, basically built on top of unresolved conflict.
So you can see how the kingdom was basically on a collision course. On one side, you've got King James II. He's a Catholic monarch in a very Protestant nation, and he's pushing to strengthen what's called the royal prerogative. That's basically the king's right to do what he wants without Parliament's okay. And on the other side, a Protestant Parliament that's absolutely terrified of going back to an all-powerful king, and even worse, a permanent Catholic dynasty.
And James II didn't just have these goals, he was actively making them happen. He started putting Catholics in high-ranking positions, and he claimed he had the power to just ignore laws passed by Parliament. For the English elite, this looked and smelled dangerously like the kind of absolute monarchy they saw over in France with Louis XIV.
And then it happened. June 1688, the one event that took this political crisis and turned it into an absolute emergency.
A baby boy was born. See, up until this point, the heir to the throne was James's Protestant daughter, Mary. The political elites figured, okay, we can just wait him out. But a Catholic son? That meant the problem wasn't temporary anymore. It was potentially a dynasty.
So what do you do when you're terrified your king is about to lock in a permanent Catholic dynasty? Well, if you're a powerful English noble in 1688, you write a secret letter.
And what happened next was, well, it was just stunningly fast. An invitation goes out to William of Orange. He's the Protestant Dutch prince who just so happens to be married to James's own daughter, Mary. He lands with a massive army. James II's support completely evaporates, gone overnight, and the king literally flees the country, leaving the throne empty.
So, let's circle back to that original question. That whole glorious and bloodless thing? Yeah, that really only applied to England. In Ireland and Scotland, supporters of James II, they were known as Jacobites, fought bloody, brutal wars against William's forces for years. It was definitely a violent transfer of power, just not on the streets of London.
Now, with James out of the picture, Parliament didn't just hand the crown over to William and Mary. Nope, they made a deal. They offered them the throne, but it came with a brand new set of terms and conditions attached. And this was the Bill of Rights.
I absolutely love this quote because it just nails it. The Glorious Revolution managed to solve the problems that caused the Civil War, not with another battle, but with a legal document. It was a revolution on paper.
And the result of all this was a brand new type of government for England, a constitutional monarchy. Basically, this meant the monarch's days of being all-powerful were over. From this point on, they had to share power and rule according to the laws passed by Parliament.
You can think of it like this. A government has these 5 key levers of power. What the Bill of Rights did was systematically take control of every single one. Laws, money, the army, even Parliament itself, and it shifted them firmly into Parliament's hands. This created permanent checks and balances on the king or queen. All right, let's zoom in on a specific example. This clause right here, it's all about the money. Now, it's written in that old-timey legal language, but what it's saying is absolutely revolutionary.
And here's the translation. It's the core idea of no taxation without representation. The king can't just decide to take your money anymore. He has to ask your elected representatives in Parliament first. This is a massive, massive shift in power.
Okay, here's another crucial one. This time it's about rights inside Parliament. It basically protects freedom of speech for members of Parliament during their debates. Now, why is that such a big deal? Because it means that members of Parliament can actually do their jobs.
They can criticize the government. They can debate any topic they want, all without being afraid that the king is going to throw them in jail for something they said. It's the foundation of any open and honest legislative debate.
So, let's pull back and look at the big picture here. This whole thing wasn't just about getting rid of one king, it was about creating an entirely new system, one that would last for centuries.
The long-term legacy here is just immense. It finally settled that huge power struggle between the monarch and parliament. It secured a Protestant line of succession, and it laid down the bedrock principles that would go on to inspire documents like the American Bill of Rights almost a century later.
But, and this is a really important but, we have to remember, this was not yet a democracy. This revolution was led by aristocrats trying to protect their own power. It was a huge step toward liberty, for sure, but the average person still had no say in their government. The right to vote was still extremely limited for centuries to come.
1689. It really is more than just a year. It's the moment a kingdom's entire DNA was rewritten, not by the force of swords and guns, but by the force of ideas written down on paper.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The right to free speech in our legislatures, the idea that our elected bodies control government spending, the right to petition the government without being afraid. These ideas didn't just come from nowhere. They were hammered out in a moment of crisis, and they were written down in clauses just like these, over 300 years ago.